Sunday days. Evening, everybody. Welcome to this live stream. My name is Pyotr. This is the Global Gambit, a podcast that looks at geopolitics, economics, international relations, and what seems to be a little bit of a reoccurring theme now is we're joined by Larry Johnson, ex-CIA analyst Larry Johnson. We seem to be doing this at a weekly agreement sort of thing at this time, sort of around about this time, right?
Yeah, I'm like a bad case of herpes. I keep coming back.
Well, I mean, I actually like to see you, unlike herpes.
Oh, okay, okay. All right.
Yeah, but as I was saying to Larry off air, everyone, I'm actually coming to you from Bucharest, Romania, which is why my background looks like an Airbnb, because that's exactly what it is. It's 1 o'clock here, so we're going to keep it nice and short and sweet, I think. But Larry, I mean, lots going on right now, isn't there? The talks don't seem to be going anywhere, not that they ever were. I almost feel like this is a bit of a deliberate game. Like both sides are deliberately sort of rejecting it just as a way to sort of keep the markets on edge or something. I feel like Trump's playing another game here.
Well, yeah, Trump's definitely playing a game. Iran's not. Iran's really trying to secure a permanent peace. But when you're dealing with somebody who's genuinely crazy, I mean, Trump is not in possession of his full faculties. He can talk. He's not slobbering on himself and chittering away like a enraged monkey. But there's no logic and consistency in his thought process. So just today he announced that, quote, tomorrow, which it is where you are, it's tomorrow already. It's tomorrow in Iran. He's going to send the U.S. Navy into the Strait of Hormuz. And so we'll find out if he actually does that. If he does, it's a suicide mission for that ship or ships that attempted. But and if they attempt it, Iran will probably sink them. And then once we've sunk some ships, then the war is back on full blast. And Trump he announced that, the epic fury or epic Epstein, whatever, his last exercise was, take the attention off of Jeffrey Epstein exercise. That ended on May 1st. It just happened to coincide with the drop dead date for the War Powers Act, where Congress would have to approve continuing the war, or he would have to pull everybody out. So instead of doing that, he said, "Oh, it's over. We've won." And now he says, starting Monday, we're going to have Operation freedom of navigation or something. So they're going to couch this as an entire new military operation. So they get out from the legal requirement of having to comply with the War Powers Act. They're just, they're playing with fire. If this war restarts, it will exhaust and deplete some critical U.S. Offensive resources and defensive weapons. And it's going to result in far more casualties than U.S. has experienced up to this point. They've done a good job of hiding how many have actually been killed and wounded, but it's a substantial number.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go there today because I think it's better just to stay on Iran right now. But like the whole discussion over NATO and Germany and troop reductions and then armaments, like the Americans don't have the capacity to rearm themselves, let alone the whole threats over NATO, Germany, right, and all that sort of stuff. Like people are freaking out about it. But like Trump's short-termism, right? Short-sightedness has cost the US so long. And something I did want to explore with you, and I see some people in the comments already talking about it, is China, right? Mm-hmm. How much does America rely on certain core materials to be able to replenish its stockpiles? And where are all those materials based? It's China.
Yeah. So the rare earth minerals, if you just do an AI search, ask what rare earth minerals are required, or are rare earth minerals required for the Tomahawk, for the JASSM, for the Patriot 3, and for the THAAD interceptor. And you get the answer, hey, rare earth minerals required for all of those. Oh, okay. Then ask the follow-up question. Well, who controls those rare earth minerals? Well, that would be China. And China has already put restrictions on those rare earth minerals going to the United States. So it's even a question that if the United States has the money and the desire to build more of those weapons, and if they actually had a physical plant where they could ramp up production, they still can't produce them without those rare earth minerals. So
I,
they're
I
stuck.
think I think a lot of emphasis is put on, the biggest winner being Russia or biggest loser being the US. But the biggest China, I think, is China. Realistic in a longer term setting, Russia benefits right now, but I'm not sure how long it can benefit from the pricing of the oil and such. I think China wins more structurally from this.
Well, it's that if China and Russia were working at odds with each other or working just independent of one another, but they're close coordination. They're working together, so they are partners, and I know they see this as this has created the opportunity for the BRICS nations to finally carve out an independent financial system that's not beholden to the United States, not controlled and dominated by the United States. Do you know right now the top four banks in the world are Chinese, largest banks, followed by J.P. Morgan, then Citibank, and then after that you've got like a French bank and a Japanese bank in the top 10. But anyway, China, the top 10 banks, controls 40% of the largest banks in the world. So they're developing and expanding on the financial side of the house. They've got the industrial side. They're clearly the king. They've improved the welfare of their population enormously over the course of the last 20 years, where they're really developing a solid middle class in China. That becomes consumers of their own goods. It's not just finding people overseas to buy the Chinese stuff. The local Chinese are buying it because they're experiencing more wealth. So United States is lost.
I agree, but do you feel convinced by the prospects of BRICS? Because you do have an organization with a lot of differing opinions. The Indians and the Chinese don't exactly get on. Iran's in it, but they don't have the best relationships with Pakistanis, and also the bigger it gets, the more bloated it becomes, right? So I'm kind of curious, what do you think about BRICS longer term then?
Well, see, I actually think it's got a pretty bright future. Look, right now, China, before, the only way to send wire money from bank to bank was to use SWIFT, the ironically named SWIFT, because it was anything but speedy. It should have been called molasses or frozen in time. It was slow. Sometimes the people would wait 2-3 days to get confirmation of a wire, because all it is, it's an email system. That's what it is. It's like, let's call it an analog email system. China has come up now with CIPS, cross-border interbank payment system, CIPS. And CIPS is digital, and it is practically instantaneous. And so, it's attracting more and more activity for wiring money and moving money among banks. And so that's, just the technology of it alone is going to have China, Russia outpacing the West. So this is the U.S. effort to punish and intimidate with sanctions. They've lost. You just saw that China in the last 24 hours has instructed all of its oil refineries and any companies doing business with Iran, ignore the threat of U.S. sanctions. Ignore them. We're not going to abide by them. We're not going to enforce them at all.
Yeah, I just, before we go back down there, I just kind of want to come back to the talks as well themselves, because I'm curious what you think about just this merry-go-round this sort
Mhm.
of, well, I don't know if you know the expression, it's a bit dirty, but like circle jerk, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it just seems like a bit of a circle jerk. Like each day there's a new proposal, and Trump sort of saying, "Well, we'll review it," and then nothing really happens, and then there's another proposal from someone, and then someone else is reviewing it. Now, I appreciate what you're saying about the Iranians genuinely coming at this from a traditional sincerity versus the United States. I mean, I
Right.
think that the Iranians have a united front. There's obviously differences of opinion between different factions within the government, but relative to the shit show and dysfunctionality that is the American government,
Sure.
it's pretty clear they're approaching it in a united front. So, like, what is going on here, do you think, as someone who's been on the inside? What do you think is actually going on here in the US mind? Is it Trump just doesn't know what he's doing? He can't make up his mind. He doesn't want to make up his mind because of his ego. Like, what do you think is the
Yeah.
biggest driver here?
No, I think it's the latter. His ego is in the way. Ego's in the way. But Iran, its proposals, it's not coming back with more, let's call it conciliatory proposals that basically has Iran surrendering. Not at all. If anything, I think their latest proposals are getting tougher and more demanding. So, for example, that they've taken, my understanding is that they've taken talk about nuclear enrichment. That's fully off the table. That's not open for discussion anymore because they are a sovereign country. They're signatories to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, and they've allowed IAEA inspections. They're doing everything that they have to do under international law. So they're not going to surrender their sovereignty to the United States anymore. That's the message. And if you don't like it, screw you. And this is where Trump today announced, about an hour ago, that hour and a half, that he's going to send a ship, the U.S. Navy, into the Strait of Hormuz. He said he's naming it a new operation, and they're going to, quote, open the Strait of Hormuz. Well, not going to happen. This is going to restart the war that has been on hiatus now for 4 weeks, and it'll get going in a more devastating fashion than what we saw even in the first 5 weeks, particularly for the West. Yeah. So what?
You think we're going to go back to the war that we had in March?
Yeah. Only with more missiles. Israel, a lot of the air defense systems are really no longer working, despite the claims to the contrary. Oh, if you saw yesterday, Pentagon announced that it made this major multi-billion-dollar deal to sell Patriot missiles to a variety of countries. They're selling something they don't have. It's going to be years in reality before some of these people get even see one of those weapons.
I'm on mute. So then, like, how does that work though? Because if the Americans have depleted, what is it, a third, nearly 40% of their stockpiles of certain missiles, interceptors, Tomahawks, whatever, how are they going to be able to sustain another month's worth?
Oh, they can't. They can't. That's the point.
So how can they go back?
This is why I say they're lying. That let's just let's take the PAC-3. And I may be repeating myself, but it's important that people understand the numbers. From 2015 to December 31st of 2025, so basically 10 years or 11 years. Over that 11-year period, the United States produced a grand total, and because in this, for the first 6 years, they said it was a range of 100 to 300. So I'm giving them 300, giving them the most optimistic assumption. 6,420 missiles. Of that 6,420, 2,000 were sold to foreign governments. Okay? So do the math. We take 6,000, we subtract 2,000, we're down to 4,420. Then during the course of the war with Russia and Ukraine, we sent the Ukrainians roughly about 1,000 more of the PAC-3. So now we're down to 3,420. Then understand that 3,420 means you'll shoot 2 of those for every inbound ballistic missile or cruise missile. So instead of saying that you've got 3,420, you've really got the capability to defeat 1,700 missiles. How many missiles did Iran fire in the 12-day war last year? I think it was over 900.
Yeah, it was coming on for 1,000, wasn't it?
So how many Patriots were shot at that? You again remember, if you went 2 per missile and they fired at all 900, you don't have any more PAC-3s. They're gone. Okay, or let's say that they just fired half. So they only fired at 500. Well, that means they used up 1,000 of those PAC-3s. So now you're down to 2,000 some, and then they just fired. I think Iran fired a total of 4,000 missiles over the course of 5 weeks.
Well, what that demonstrated is just how insanely big their arsenal is, and how badly underestimating the United States was. I think this is a quintessential example, Larry, of the Trump administration, or Trump overestimating his capabilities and severely underestimating the Iranians, or the adaptability of the Iranians in this case.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, Peter. Yeah, this is, and that's why I said they're lying when they came. CNN, I applaud CNN or New York Times, whoever it was that produced the report, to say, yeah, they've depleted, but the numbers they were given about depletions were really overly optimistic, because the numbers, I think, are far, far worse than what they're reporting. That, or in these previous missile attacks, they never fired the Patriots. And we know that the Iron Dome is a piece of junk. It doesn't work. So
in all of this, obviously, it's now been exactly a month, more or less, since the bombing campaign stopped. So we've had 1 month of intense bombing with the utilization or the usage of the stockpiles, as we've just said. But in the past month now, it's been a sort of slow burning case of the Hormuz Strait sort of closed, but not really, because ships, including a Russian oligarch super yacht, traversing it. So, do you think that we're going to see any shift in the Strait at all, or is it just going to be a case of it's meant to be shut, but you get a trickle?
Well, it's not really shut. It's open for business for those ships that are sailing under the flag of the country that's aligned with Iran. There's nothing. Iran's allowing that to take place, and the United States, despite the claim that it's running a blockade, is not running an actual blockade, because it doesn't have the ships. It doesn't actually have the physical number of ships required to implement an effective blockade, coupled with the fact that it can't get close enough to the Iranian shore without running the risk of being hit with underwater or surface drones, aerial drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, the whole shooting match. So Iran has been able to, continue actually to have ships go in and out, but that under its control. The ones that are so far, they haven't allowed ships from Saudis to Kuwaitis, Qataris, and the Emiratis to go in and out. That's where it's stalled, and Iran's going to require the negotiations with each of those. Say, hey, you want to use the Strait? You want to be, come in and out without any problems? Great. Get the United States the hell out of your country. We're not going to sit here and let you do that while you're hosting people that are attacking us. And and I think some will tell the United States, hey, it's been nice knowing you.
Well, I do think it's insane, really. Just the Strait was never an issue before. I mean, there were tensions around it, obviously, but that was often just America and Iranian tensions more broadly. But now you've got the situation where, realistically, a toll will become the most likely outcome. Maybe a shared toll with the Omanis. Maybe there's an agreement with the Gulf states as signatories, right? The GCC. But what I am also curious, I mean, I appreciate if you're not an energy expert necessarily, but I think the last time we chatted earlier in the week was when UAE had just announced its departure from OPEC, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like they want to depart more broadly from the Arab League as well, or suspend a couple of other arrangements with the Middle Eastern region. What does that mean to you in terms of relations with Iran and how Iran leverages it?
Well, it doesn't mean anything yet. I mean, it's right now, it's a meaningless gesture because UAE says, okay, we're gonna set our own price for oil. Okay, good luck with that. Are you pumping any oil these days? Well, no. Are you shipping any oil out? Well, no. So you're going to set a price of oil for something that you don't produce right now and you don't have. Now, when this war ends, and it will end ultimately with, I think the United States is essentially going to have to surrender. They won't call it a surrender, but they're going to basically cave to Iran. And at that point, the UAE is going to be screwed. They're betting entirely upon the United States and Israel prevailing, and they're going to find out the hard way that was a bad bet. So, that the goal is to try to prevent OPEC from setting a price and controlling the price of oil in the world. Well, where we're at right now is there is no set price. There is no control. And there's not going to be any for the foreseeable future. Because even let's say tomorrow that Iran says, oh my God, we're afraid of the Americans. We surrender, we quit. And as of tomorrow, the strait is wide open. The damage done to the oil market is not going to be fully taken care of for at least until December. So this is, as I said, this is a long-term problem, and this is likely to go on without a solution. And the longer it goes on, the more the disruption in the oil market, the more prices are skyrocketing. What is the price of petrol over there right now in Romania, as an example? Because they've got oil.
Yeah, for people who've joined since we started the live stream, I am in Romania on a brief trip because it's bank holiday in the UK. You said you wanted to hear gas prices.
Yeah.
After Iran, let's see here. I mean, they've gone up by they jumped nearly 20%. So the initial shock, they went up nearly 20%. By mid-March, they had gone up. They had remained. They're around about 15% higher than they should be, which for a country like Romania is a lot because the average income here is still quite low.
Because they produce. I think they still have a fairly decent oil production, at least enough to meet some of their domestic demand. Because remember that was
Hitler's. They have a relationship with Russia as well, which has been. And also Turkey. There's a couple of pipelines, if I remember correctly, from Turkey, which provide some energy up through Bulgaria and to Bucharest and stuff. I'm not an expert on this part of the world too much, well, in energy provision, but yeah, I think they have some options. They're not as hard hit as some countries like Austria or more that are without any maritime access at all, like landlocked.
Remember during World War II, Romania and Armenia were two major targets for Hitler. They needed the oil. And they were, going for those countries. This is what's happened here to gas in Florida, where I live. So on February 27th, it was $2.54. Now it is one penny shy of $4. So that's that's $1.50 increase right there.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah. And we're in an area where it's not as bad here as it is when you get into the Midwest, into Iowa, Michigan, Illinois, Minnesota, Missouri. It's really bad there because they don't have the oil has to be transported. It's got more transportation costs attached to it. So and now the opinion polls have completely turned against Donald Trump. That 55% of Republicans are blaming Trump for the rise in the price of gasoline. So this war is now starting to bite and bite hard, and it's only beginning to bite. That's the thing. I keep trying to warn people. This is only the very beginning. This is like that moment we talked about the tsunami. We've been through the phase now where the water was rushing away. Now the water's starting to rush in. We can see the waves coming. It hasn't hit us yet full force, but it's coming, and that's where you turn around and run for your life. Get to high ground, because when it hits in full force, like I went out to buy, I got two Rottweilers, big beasts, about 100 and,
Of course you do. I wondered if you had Rottweilers.
They're about 70 kilos.
Wow.
65, 70 kilos a piece. So, the one boy, one girl, they eat a healthy amount. And we feed them raw food. So we would give logs 5 pound, so what is that? 2.5 kilo log of hamburger. And a year ago, we were paying for like $14.50 for it. Now today, $21.50.
Jesus Christ, that's a huge
so that's 100% increase.
Yeah.
So and it's happening across the board, and in fact that the price of that hamburger in just the last 2 months, it's gone up. It went up. It's gone from 17 to 21. So I mean, it's rapidly accelerating, and that's what that economic impact is going to affect what Trump does. If he right now he's threatening to launch, if he puts a U.S. Navy ship into the Strait of Hormuz tomorrow, the odds are very, very high that Iran will attack it and sink it.
So I'm just looking through some of the comments here. I am going to put this one on screen. Don't forget to like and subscribe, everybody. Add your comments below. Do you have Rottweilers? I want to know. I have to be honest, Larry, if I did get a dog, I'm very tempted by a Corgi. I love German Shepherds, but I also love my Corgis. Maybe it's because I'm English. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's fine. But the Rotties, I've had a variety of dogs over the years, and the Rotties is my favorite breed.
No, there's a certain. I remember my best friend had one when he was younger, and they can be quite intimidating at first, but if you get to know their real characters, they can be incredibly sweet and always very protective of you.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's
no, they're very. My dog's problem is weighing 70 kilos or 140 pounds. They think they're lap dogs. They think they're corgis.
Yeah, that is true.
But when they sit on you, it's like you get a lot of weight.
No, I remember that I was like 10 years old and they weighed at least a good, one and a bit more of me. But yeah, so one of the other things that I saw in Western media, or at least in the past day or so, was that the Iranians have continued to mine the Strait of Hormuz, which I think is an unsurprising move, but people were sort of reporting it as though it's an outrageous development, which frankly doesn't surprise me at all. And I mean, just on and to couple that with what you said about if they're going to send a warship in, if Trump were to do that, though, that's so counterproductive. And ultimately, I don't think he is going to do that, though. Do you really think he would do that? Because I feel like he's just the definition of empty threats.
He just announced it, so we'll find out if he does another taco, if it's Taco Monday. But he said about 2 hours ago, I think it was on Truth Social, that tomorrow, Monday, he's going to open the Strait of Hormuz and send in Navy ships. Now, people need to understand sort of the history that has gone on back in 1987. So the U.S.-backed war of Iraq attacking Iran was, and it's, coming to a close. And at that time, Iran was trying to punish the Gulf Arabs because the Gulf Arabs were supporting Saddam. They were providing funding. So Iran back then mined the straits, mined the Persian Gulf. But the U.S. sent in ships, minesweepers, as well as the Navy SEALs set up a base. It was a floating base called the Hercules barge. and a good friend of mine was the one who commanded that. SEAL named Paul Evanko. And back then, Iran did not have ballistic missiles. They didn't have cruise missiles to speak of. They didn't have drones. So they had limited power to shut down and prevent the U.S. Navy from operating in the Persian Gulf. That's not the situation now. It's just the opposite.
Absolutely absurd. I mean, one of the air carrier strike groups had to go back to the Med to have something repaired anyway. So it's not like the US hasn't been free of its own challenges in the past 2 months anyway. So if they're going to risk yet another naval asset for a completely pointless offensive or some kind of threatening,
well, again, they think it's a simple matter that all you have to do is sell a ship in. So if they sell in a destroyer and they arm the destroyer is armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles, they can fire those missiles. They act as if what is keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed is that Iran is sitting there with fixed firing positions that are above ground, that are largely unprotected, and that you've only got like 10 or 20 of these positions you got to worry about. Well, that's not the case at all. Iran's got a very elaborate, multi-layered system that it can use to create a threat to the United States. So you've got the mines, they've got mini subs with torpedoes, they have underwater drones, they have surface ship drones that can be, they're like a kamikaze aircraft, except there's no human being on board. And it's steered by, a bunch of 19, 20-year-olds with a joystick. Kids grow up playing video games, and by God, you now get to use it practically in military service. Then on top of that, you have small boats, they're called bog hammers, that are armed with missiles that can be fired. So those will be manned with 2-3 men on board. They've got hundreds of those. Then they have regular drones. They have coastal cruise missiles, coastal defense cruise missiles are called. Those are fired out of caves that are there along the strait. And then they have the ballistic missiles, both short range, intermediate range, and they have the Iran drones. So they've got a whole panoply of weapons that they can call on to attack a ship that is sailing without permission through a particular area. And they've used the mines to channel those ships into a particular area where they can control it. So that's why I said opening the Strait of Hormuz would involve a very complex, heavy commitment of armed forces, because you don't just deal with what's there on the shore. You'd have to land troops and move those troops inland, probably up to 100 miles, because ballistic missiles can be from underground cities can be fired from that distance, as well as drones. That's why I say it's not a simple matter of just sailing the ship in. We're here. We dare you to shoot at us. No.
But hasn't the Iranian Navy been destroyed, Larry?
Yeah, that's what we're told. Just like, the Air Force was destroyed, except they had a plane that went and bombed one of the U.S. military bases in Kuwait. Their missiles are destroyed, except they've now determined that probably 70% of their missile force is still intact.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, we got to stop lying to ourselves in the United States.
Well, I think it's absurd, isn't it? All this idea. I mean, it looked like we had not just air superiority, but air supremacy. And then what happens, right? We had you on, we were discussing it a few hours after it happened, when the jet was shot down, and then also I think it was a helicopter, right, in part of the search and rescue. So the whole claims about absolute invincibility or military dominance by the United States is not the case. The Iranians have had to do very little to be a thorn in the side, right? The asymmetrical warfare,
Right.
and apply that right pressure. In some ways, the Iranians have actually done quite minimal, because they've just put the right amount of pressure in the right places, and it's disproportionately had an impact on America's interests and now the economy and everything else.
Right.
What I am interested in is what your thoughts are internally in Iran, because there have been deliberate debates around how much unity there is. I mentioned it earlier in our conversation, but like, because some people who are more moderate want to engage the United States and seek a peace deal and discuss nuclear enrichment and so on. And then you've got the hardliners, or what the West calls the hardliners,
Well, yeah,
with the parliament speaker,
yeah,
Like, what's
yeah.
your thoughts?
That's all myth. That's all Israeli myth. The Israel. I have not seen the physical intelligence, but I have to conclude this is not U.S. generated. This comes from an Israeli source liaison, because Israel claims that it's got the best sources internal to Iran, and they passed it to the United States, and the intel community is briefing this to Donald Trump and saying, "No, according to reliable intelligence that we received from Israel, there's this great debate within the Iranian leadership." That's an absolute lie. The unity of Iran is when you step back and say, okay, President Pezeshkian, Foreign Minister Arachi, the Speaker of the Parliament Ghalibaf, and then the Ayatollah Khamenei, Moshtaba Khamenei, and then the current head of the IRGC. What do they all share in common? They all were part of the IRGC during the war with Iraq, 1980 to 88. Now, Pezeshkian was brought in through the regular army, but he was a medic, a physician. So he was assigned to work permanently with the IRGC. So that's where he got his tie-in with the IRGC. Everybody else, Arachi, Ghalibaf, and the Ayatollah, they all fought saw combat with the IRGC. So that's why I said they're not divided. There's, if anything, they probably got greater unity now than at any time in the history of the Iranian Republic.
There is, but from my studies of their relationships, there has been a growing divergence amongst the clerics, the theology types, and then the more pragmatic ones, the ones that want the IRGC, and other areas that want to sort of lessen the influence of the theological aspects. And Mojtaba seems to be quite a good facilitator or connector between the different parts of the system. I don't know if you would agree with that, but like, from my understanding, Ali Khamenei, his father, was quite good at keeping certain parts of this very complicated system in check. And it seems to me with him gone, it might be harder to do that.
Well, again, the critics in the West characterize the Iranian system as quite rigid, quite authoritarian, very inflexible. And it's the opposite is true, because in the early days, yes, the religious police were out about and women were required to keep their heads covered. Well, that's gone away. And I know from talking to Alistair Crook and his wife, Aisling, that Max Blumenthal and his wife, they were all in Tehran a year ago, March. And, what they saw, what they experienced was, you'd get teenagers would be on the subways, couples, hugging, kissing, doing the thing teenagers do, showing affection in society, in public. So, it's quite a different picture from this. Again, the one as if they're living in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has much more restrictions.
No, Iran has always been one of the top countries I always want to visit, and frankly, I find it a much more culturally deep and complex, rich place than Saudi Arabia, if I'm honest. And all this idea of how sort of progressive MBS has been since taking over as the crown prince. Not really. Iran's been allowing women to drive for decades.
Yeah.
It's been equality for years. And
Well,
I agree with you.
they got women in the parliament too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I agree with you very much on the adaptability, on the flexibility of the system, especially after the 12-day war. From my understanding, Khatami made quite a lot of purposeful changes, decentralizing the command and control system so that they could operate independently if what happened on February 28th did happen.
Yeah.
Even if there was a loss of the head of the government, they had the capacity to still act and retaliate and respond consistently. So I remain very skeptical that sort of this idea that you can see regime change still. I'm still hearing from my friends in DC that there are still tremors amongst the White House of the idea of, well, maybe we should try to push for regime change. Like, in what world is this?
Yeah, good luck with that. What Trump has accomplished is increasing the unity of Iranians and the support for the government beyond what it was, say, in February 25th. This illegal, unjust attack, and particularly killing the 165 girls in that school in Medan, that has become a vibrant symbol of Iranian resistance. Why they resist, why they continue to fight, and what is happening to the United States is it's using up weapons systems that it cannot easily replace. It doesn't have a plan in place for replacing them. And it is actually weakening U.S. capabilities. So in the event that there was a war with China, that the United States would be done in 2 weeks. We'd lose in 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks tops.
I used to be skeptical about the situation with China, but after what we've done with Iran, what's happened with Iran, and the way that things have played, any scenario that involves Taiwan and China is not looking good.
Right.
But I guess the last few minutes, Larry, I just wanted to get your take on the nuclear deal, or the nuclear angle, because we chatted about it before, but the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, it would have given Iran a very clear trajectory, a limit on enrichment, and then Trump just destroyed the whole thing by leaving it unilaterally. And what all seems to be happening is that the Iranians are open to talking about it, but Trump wants the demands that basically are exactly the same as the deal the Obama administration negotiated. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
But if anything, now Iran's taking a tougher stance with respect to the question of nuclear enrichment. If prior to even prior to the start of this latest round of war, so on February 27th, 26th, there were things that Iran was willing to entertain in terms of limits on enrichment, storage of the highly enriched uranium that's at 60%, having that stored and handled by someone like Russia. Now, as I understand it, they've come back and basically said, all those offers, they're off the table. They no longer apply. That we will retain the right to decide how much we want to enrich, because we're signatories to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. We allow the International Atomic Energy Agency to come in and inspect our facilities. We'll continue to allow that, but with restrictions that any other country imposes. And they said, but Israel isn't required to do any, and Israel hasn't volunteered to do any of this. We're volunteering to do that. That's what we will do. That was the offer. But we're not going to surrender our sovereign right to control what we enrich and how. And that's that's going to be an impossible position for Trump to accept, and Iran will say, okay, then you continue the fight. They're prepared to continue the fight till one side has to surrender.
But that's what I find so absurd. I was reading a report earlier in Al Arabia, and it was saying that Iran might have actually been willing to soften its stance, but because of the maximalist demands that Trump keeps pushing for, and therefore Iran doesn't want US military buildup, it doesn't want all these pressure points around it, the continuous threat on its immediate borders, on its sovereignty, as a lot of nation states would feel. It's made them go back to square one. Trump's coercive diplomacy isn't working, right? It's sort of zero-sum game doesn't work in this environment, because that's not how the Iranians negotiate.
Yeah, no,
You've got ego versus pride, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. The Trump bullying act, it's gotten tiresome. I think people are just weary of it. They see, Trump thinks it makes him an effective negotiator, and more people are just rolling their eyes looking at him because he no longer has credibility. So
I think
this
you're
is
wary talking about it by the sounds of it.
yeah,
He's very wary as well.
yeah. It's just he has. It's like he's embarked on a policy to say, how many people can I piss off? And it's like, yeah, the world looks like right now the Grand Alliance will be United States, Israel, and United Arab Emirates. Ooh, there's formidable.
Well, this is the point, Larry. I think we said it in one of our very first streams together, but which is it takes a special kind of stupid to unite so many different camps together across the world. One single bloke being able to bring so many people together who think he's a complete monkey. Very last question, or couple of questions. What do you think will happen with China and America if the Trump Xi Jinping meeting takes place? What do you think we could see that? Do you think Trump's going to be good behavior?
No, Trump. If Trump thinks China's going to tell Trump there's a new sheriff in town. You no longer run the world. If you're going to do anything, if you hope to have any influence globally, you're going to have to cooperate and collaborate with us and with the Russians. You got to stop the sanctions nonsense. We can negotiate, and we'd prefer to negotiate, but Trump, I don't think he'll hear that message. He won't be receptive. I'll be surprised if the visit comes off. I think,
really?
Yeah,
interesting.
I know that Trump wants to, but I think he's gonna restart the war, and the tensions with China are going to escalate dramatically.
Okay, well, and then okay, and what does China do in that regard?
Well,
Just
China,
sit back and allow him to impose?
no. China's already supplying, weapons, intelligence, satellite photos, satellite data to Iran. So, because China understands, Iran now is a proxy for China. It's fighting a proxy war against the United States, who has vowed that it was going to attack China at some point in the future. And here's China as well. I think they'll tighten up further on their control of rare earth minerals to make sure the United States doesn't have those, because they recognize the United States is going to use those rare earth minerals to build weapons that would be used to attack China. And China's, they're not going to give their enemy a loaded gun to shoot at them with.
But why is Trump allowing China to get away with that? Why is he not sanctioning them more? Why is he not doing something more?
Well, there's not a lot of, because if it comes to who's got who by the balls, is China has the United Uncle Sam. Squeeze in the cojones. They got him in a vice, because there's nothing that the United States produces that China needs. Nothing. There's a lot that China produces that the U.S. needs. That's it. We'll make that simple. So, and it starts with the rare earth minerals on the military side.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't think, I think the meeting might happen, but I don't think you're going to get. I think people are putting a lot of emphasis on it, but I don't think much is going to come from it, but for many of the reasons you said.
Yeah,
Americans
yeah.
have very little cards to play.
Well, Putin definitely will be making a visit. So Putin's visit will be, I think, uh, after Trump's, if Trump makes it. But again, you've not seen the White House announce, hey, we're going to China on May 10th, May 15th. I haven't seen that kind of announcement yet, because I think, frankly, they're still working out the details.
Well, you made quite a strong prediction the last time we spoke about Friday, with Russia and something else. I think it was Ukraine, but nothing happened.
Yeah, nothing happened. Well, the the well, actually, what has happened is there's been a big uptick in the drone strikes on both sides. And
Mhm.
today, Ukraine attacked Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. They attacked the building that does nuclear monitoring. So the thing's intensifying, and Russia has shifted its strategy where now it's targeting more high level Ukrainian officers. So they're doing that. So this thing is it's not getting a lot of attention, but they had there had been that announcement that they were going to, May 1st, and May 1st came and went without them showing an immediate dramatic uptick. But the war continues to go against Ukraine, and we're going to see there'll be a pause this week on May next Sunday, a
Mhm.
pause, or next Saturday, excuse me. There'll be a ceasefire on Saturday.
For VD Day, for Victory Day.
Yeah.
Just a quick take on that though, Larry. I mean, it's not, from what I've read, there's not meant to be quite as big a parade this year,
Yeah,
according
yeah,
to.
it's the 81st. When you got we got a thing about decades, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 year anniversaries, or that was 80th last year. And whoever's around in 20 more years for the 100th.
Goodness me. Well, based on Putin's desire for living to 150 or something, he was talking to
Yeah,
Xi
yeah.
a few months back. All right. Well, Larry, thank you as always for so much of your time. You're very generous, everyone, for watching. Do give a like and subscribe, of course. Larry, anything you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah,
Any
this
final
come on over
farewells?
to sonar21.com. If you sign up, you can comment, and then argue back and forth with I allow people quite a wide latitude for arguing. Yeah, because some of this is quite clear, and some of it is, our
Nuanced.
best guess.
Yeah, no, for sure. I do head on over and check it out, everyone. Sonar 21, was it?
Yes, sonar21.com.
I'll put a look in. I'll put a link in the description. Everyone, do check out Larry's website and his work, of course. I mean, his Hawaiian shirts and everything. But as always, everyone, thanks very much for watching. It is 2 o'clock in the morning here in Romanian time, so I'm going to go to bed.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks a lot,
Have a
everyone.
have a good night.
Than's a lot, Larry.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Larry is always a star for coming on at, well, the same time, same place. Well, not for me. I'm in Romania. Next week I'll probably be in London. But yeah, if you know where to find us, the Global Gambit podcast. Me and Larry differ on some opinions, but as you can see, we have a extremely constructive and civil conversation. I think it's really, really fun speaking to Larry. He's got some interesting professional experiences, as well as his great sense of humor. See, yeah, someone's just written, yeah, a great sense of humor, always a good sense of humor, exactly. And before we got on air, yeah, he took a lot of interest in me being in Romania, which is where I am. I'm coming to you from Bucharest. This is an Airbnb. I'm actually sitting on a metal stool and my feet are killing because I have to put my feet on the metal bars and it's horrible. I don't also have my proper equipment. I have literally like a tripod, my laptop, no proper lighting. So my beautiful face is not quite as beautiful today. But yeah, I would just summarize from my perspective, the situation, I think, with the Iran war and the US is I've diversified a little bit away. Some of you probably know that I've mainly focused on the war in Iran for the past couple of months, not exclusively, but mainly. But there's only so much I think one can talk about the negotiations. At the end of the day, this is a bit of a circle jerk. I think that neither side are really wanting to back down, admit defeat, if you like. It's Trump's ego versus Iran's pride and survival. At the end of the day, the Iranians are fighting for something much more important than Trump is. Trump's just doing this because he thinks it's what he should do, because he deserves it, and they should just agree with his demands because it's him. Versus the Iranians, which are literally doing this because they have no other choice. This isn't a defense of Iran. I want to make it very clear that when I'm talking in criticism of Trump, it's not necessarily a defense of the Islamic Republic. They have treated their people appallingly, and we mustn't forget the numbers of people who were killed and maimed in January. But the bottom line is that out of the two sides here, and what triggered this entire conflict was Trump and the greater input or manipulation or influence of the Israeli government, especially Netanyahu and Smotrich and Ben Gvir and all those types. So I'm critical of both sides, but I'm more critical of Donald Trump and the US administration, because none of this was necessary. I'm sure there was a better way to try to get behavioral change, leadership change within Iran. And ultimately, you can see that a lot of Iranians have reservations for what's happened because they didn't realize the extent to which the Israelis and Americans would decimate the country and destroy so much of the country. So, yeah, but anyway, guys, why did you just have to ruin it, bro? I mean, I have my own opinions as well, and it is my channel. I'm going to share my own opinions. I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to do. Hey, guys, yeah, come to Romania. It's pretty cool. Bucharest is very pretty in parts. I went to the Museum of Communism, which was very interesting. And I had the most amazing dinner. They've got some great food here. It's like sort of a mix of German, Slavic, Turkish. It's a real smorgasbord of everything. But yeah, I don't think personally that the war in Iran is going to go anywhere. I think we're going to be stuck in this limbo for the next good few weeks. It's essentially a reflection of the world as it is, I think. You just experience long wars, as they're known, or hot peace, as someone in the comments wrote a couple of days ago, which I think is an interesting concept. You never sign a peace deal because you never technically declared a war. That's how most conflicts are done these days. It's not like in the 1930s or whatever, 1800s, where you officially declare war on a state. You just go to war, fight indefinitely, maybe sign a cessation of hostilities, and then you sort of discontinue, both coming away probably worse off than when you started, making very minimal gains, and ultimately the whole world's affected because of how much everything is integrated. So if you want my honest opinion, I think the biggest news has been UAE, OPEC. I think that's going to be very interesting to see what happens to the GCC more broadly as a bloc. Do I think that it's suddenly going to mean the dissolution of OPEC or something like that? Not necessarily, but I think multilateral groups like OPEC, like BRICS, certain ones, it depends, not all of them, are going to be weakened. I disagree with Larry quite a lot on BRICS, if I'm honest. It's growing in its capacity to be an alternative, in that you see certain countries trading bilaterally in their local currencies, but it's amounting to very little. Where has BRICS been as a forum for peace? Iran's in it, China's in it, Russia's in it, India's in it, Pakistan is in it. The point is, it could be used as a platform, as a place to hold dialogue, to negotiate, or to develop frameworks that work for multiple states that are affected. But it's not being used at all. And I've not seen any sort of written agreement or a sort of statement from BRICS nations calling for an end to the war. It's very quiet and frankly underwhelmed. It reminds me of when Myanmar's civil war happened a few years ago, or started 5 years ago. ASEAN, which is the relative regional bloc of Southeast Asian states, it amounted to nothing. They've done nothing to help Myanmar, to help Myanmar people. to help end the conflict. And ultimately, Myanmar was allowed into the bloc. So these sorts of blocs, and much like the Arab League has done nothing to really help try to resolve the regional crisis, the Gulf War, effectively. So I think that UAE's decision to sort of leave OPEC or to just go out on its own could be the beginning of a bigger shift. More countries perhaps seeking their own independent views, or maybe seeking to form new blocs with other countries that they think benefit their interests. There's a term known as minilateralism, which is essentially smaller blocks of more streamlined issues. So AUKUS, which was a deal done by the Americans, Australians, British on nuclear energy or nuclear submarines, is an example of a minilateral group. It's much more small, it's much more focused, but it gets more things done. The same with I2U2, which is a regional bloc of India, UAE, Israel, and America. More of a nimble body than sort of something big like the Arab League or the UN, obviously, and things like that. But I'm not sure how much is going to really change. I think we're just going to be stuck in this news cycle of we wake up, there's a new peace proposal, it's being read, it's been reviewed, it's been rejected, and then the other side does the same, and it's just a dance. We're just in a dance at the moment. But anyway, guys, thanks very much for watching. Appreciate your time very much. I think ultimately, I'm just going to read one of your super thanks for this PFF. I look, at the end of the day, Russia's the winner, it is a bit of a winner, but I don't think that the short-term windfall from the money that it's made is enough to offset the structural challenges that are facing the Russian economy. Regardless of the gains that they're making on the battlefield, those are tactical level of gains, which are not enough to offset the strategic disadvantages that the Russian state currently faces. Putin is facing growing pressure from the economy, from inside his own political system, from within his own financiers, the oligarchs. He had to literally approach the oligarchs with financial advice or whatever aid earlier in April. That's not something you should do as an autocrat, especially someone as infamously powerful as Putin, or supposedly. So ultimately, I think the longer this goes on, as usual, it's going to benefit China. And I will be making a video probably in the next week about one angle of this war, which has really kind of pissed me off, which is that sort of Trump went to war with Iran. Some of you may have heard it mentioned by another channel. I'm not going to mention who it is, but they have sort of emphasized and argued that this whole war with Iran was because it was actually about China. It's complete bollocks, because Trump does not look past the end of his own nose. He can't, I don't think he can see beyond the end of his own stomach. Point being is that he seriously doesn't have some grand strategic plan about taking on the Chinese. That's absurd. And if he does, then he really has done the opposite of what he should have done, which is, well, try to target China, not somehow strengthen China, not just in a material way, but in a moral way, in a symbolic sense, right? China is seen as the sort of more responsible power. Okay, some countries don't trust it or it has its issues, but it's not America, which is going to war with everybody, burning bridges, undermining the entire global economy, and so on. So look out for that video later in the week. But otherwise, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Have a good evening. Do like, subscribe, of course. Larry will be back next week, maybe sooner. And we're bringing on some other guests. We've got someone from NATO to hear their perspective on things, former NATO Commander General Wesley Clark. We've got General Mick Ryan, who's a well-known general in the Western world. But we're also working, hopefully going to host Ray McGovern, if that's his surname correctly, and hopefully John Mearsheimer. But stay tuned, everyone. We'll see you soon. Take care.